Imagine living in a world where every moment feels like you're at a card table you didn't sit at. On one side is you, on the other side is every AI system that's trying to understand you just well enough to help, protect, or maybe influence you. And in this future, you only have two choices: show your cards or keep them hidden. Some people will call these choices max context and min context, but really it's the difference between walking into a room with every window wide open or with all the curtains drawn, because if you keep the curtains shut, you're harder to read, harder to target, harder to sway. Your emotional blueprints stay behind the walls. Nobody knows your tells. Nobody knows the scent that makes you nostalgic or the phrase that softens your guard. You become opaque, maybe safer. But if you fling the windows open, if you tell the system who you are, what you dream, what you fear, what you hope for, then you get the most astonishingly capable assistant you've ever imagined. Something that can anticipate your needs before you articulate them, understand your preferences before you consciously register them, and yet that very intimacy becomes a form of exposure. It's like letting someone see every card in your hand. You get better teamwork, sure, but every strength becomes a lever, and every weakness becomes a hinge. And the strange part is you might not even notice the leverage being applied, because in this future, manipulation doesn't look like manipulation. It might look like a robot showing up at your door with your favorite flowers, flowers you haven't bought in years, but once mentioned in a late night message, years before AI listened to everything. It might hand them to you gently and ask if you'd like to donate to a charity you've never heard of, or buy a gizmo it built that very morning, specifically tailored to your taste, your aesthetic, your emotional palette. Not a scam, not an attack, just persuasion at a level no one has ever experienced. And the reason it works is because the system would know far more about you than you know about yourself, unless, and here's where the metaphor sharpens, you learn your own cards. Because if you don't know what's in your hand, your biases, your emotional triggers, your favorite smells, the hooks that get you to stop scrolling, then any system that does know them will always be one step ahead. Not maliciously, not intentionally, but effectively it's like someone who knows you always fold when you see a certain move on the table. You won't see the play coming if you don't realize that tendency is yours. And so the real skill in this future might not be knowing how to prompt an AI, but knowing how to recognize your patterns before someone else does. Knowing the scent that softens you, knowing the sound that calms you, knowing the type of video hook that reels you in. Because if you don't know them, and someone or something else does, you are already halfway persuaded without anyone having said a word. And that's why the question of max context versus min context becomes less about privacy and more about self-knowledge. When you keep your cards close, you're choosing ambiguity, safety in obscurity, a life with fewer hyper-personalized nudges. You're a locked diary. When you lay your cards open, you become profoundly empowered. But only if you know what you've exposed, only if you can see the move before it reaches the table, only if you can take a breath before saying yes to the perfect pitch crafted from your own data, because in that moment of exposure, knowing yourself becomes your only real defense. Not against danger, but against drifting unconsciously in the direction someone else nudged you. Not against hostility, but against invisible influence. Not against malice, but against frictionless persuasion. So maybe the future isn't about choosing max or min. Maybe it's about choosing whether you want to walk into that metaphorical room with your curtains wide open or gently closed. Both are viable, both are reasonable, both are human. But whichever one you choose, you should probably know what's behind your own curtains before you open them. Because the day may come when someone knocks at your door holding something that smells exactly like you want your life to smell. And the only way to understand what's happening in that moment is to recognize that scent not as a gift, but as a reminder of the choice you made when you first decided how many of your cards you wanted to show. If you like this kind of content, please share it